The Kremlin says Ukrainian, US and Russian officials are set to hold trilateral peace talks in the United Arab Emirates today. It would be the first known meeting attended by all three countries since Moscow's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Now, this comes after the US envoy Steve Witkoff and Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner travelled to Moscow, where they spoke to the Russian leader Vladimir Putin for several hours. A Kremlin official described the talks as useful, but Moscow and Kyiv remain at odds over the key issue of territory. Donald Trump has said that a deal is, quote, reasonably close. Let's talk to our Riga bureau chief, Yuri Reshetto, about this. DW has been reporting from there since Russia banned DW from reporting from Moscow. So, Yuri, how significant would it be if Russia and Ukraine do actually end up in the same room for the first time to negotiate with each other?
Well, Anya, look, I think by now we're almost used to the fact that there has been little to no progress ever since talks started up again in this war, meaning since Donald Trump came to power. So the fact that both sides, Russians and Ukrainians, are actually sitting at the same table, or are going to sit at the same table today in Abu Dhabi now, does feel like a real step forward, maybe even the only one. Until now, things looked very different. Take the last talks in Istanbul. The two delegations sat in separate rooms while the Americans shuttled back and forth between them. What's also new this time is that the delegations are being led by military officials. On the Russian side, it's the head of military intelligence. On the Ukrainian side, it's the former head of military intelligence who now runs President Zelensky's office. That, Anya, could mean that discussions might at least focus on stopping attacks on each other's energy infrastructure. We shouldn't forget, this is a war of attrition. Both sides are trying to wear each other down by hitting infrastructure behind the front lines with drones and missiles.
So, Yuri, you're calling it a possible step forward. Does it suggest, though, that Vladimir Putin is showing a willingness to compromise? Would you go that far?
Well, if you listen to what last night Putin's foreign policy advisor Yuri Ushakov said, he said the president, so Putin, had given clear instructions on how to consistently achieve the goals of the so-called special military operation, as Russia calls this war. Diplomatically, I think that could mean keep fighting until all of Donbas is under Russian control, and that still hasn't happened. But it could also mean Putin wants to speed up the negotiations a bit, at least. He's once again seen now how unpredictable the US President Trump can be, even though Putin sees him as an ally because of Trump's dislike of the Europeans. For months, Putin watched Trump make big promises without actually cutting a deal with Ukraine. Then suddenly Trump showed strength. He kidnapped Venezuela's President Maduro, threatened to take Greenland and warned Europe about steep tariffs. And then, in Davos, Trump backed off the tariff threats again. I think this is partially about winning Trump's favor, a competition many world leaders are engaged in. And Putin probably feels now is the moment to negotiate before Trump changes his mind again.
Can you tell us how these latest talks are being seen in Russia, where the war, of course, the war on Ukraine is portrayed very differently?
Yeah, sure. Russians obviously feel the war less than Ukrainians do, but they feel it, Anya, especially people in Western Russia and most of all those living in the border regions of Belgorod and Kursk, for example. What barely made the news is that, according to independent Russian media, about 600,000 people in Belgorod, in the Belgorod region, spent almost 2 weeks without electricity in early January. That means they suffered through freezing winter temperatures without light or heating, just like people in Kyiv and elsewhere in Ukraine. Ukrainian drones and missiles hit Russian territory every day now. And Russia's state budget isn't getting fuller either. It's being drained as more and more money is put into the war. We are now approaching the 4th year of this conflict. By now, it has lasted almost as long as the Soviet Union's war against Nazi Germany from 1941 to 1945. When you take all this into account, it becomes clear that ordinary Russians want this war to end just as much as everyone else. But in the media, Anya, the same old narrative keeps being pushed, that the Europeans are those who supposedly want to keep the war going at any cost, unlike the Americans.
DW's Yuri Roshetto reporting from Riga. Yuri, thank you.